Mrs. Allen was quite struck by his genius. Men commonly take so little notice of these things, she said. I can never get Mr. Allen to know one of my gowns from another. You must be a great comfort to your sister, sir. I hope I am, madam. And pray, sir, what do you think of Miss Morland's gown? It's very pretty, madam, he said, gravely examining it, but I do not think it will wash well. I am afraid it will fray. But then, you know, madam, muslin always turns into something of a count or another. Miss Morland will get enough out of it for a handkerchief, or a cap, or a cloak. Muslin can never be said to be wasted. I have heard my sister say so 40 times when she has been extravagant in buying more than she wanted, or careless in cutting it to pieces. I'm very glad Mr. Tilney knows his fabrics. He knows his muslins, and he certainly knows a good Indian muslin. I've been listening to Northanger Abbey, and I thought it was an appropriate quote to start today's video, which is the first of our underlayers. If you remember my nice little puppet, I am going to need a start with a chemise. A really simple shift kind of thing. And I thought that quote of saying that little bits of material, a little bit of muslin can go to great account, because I am going to be using, well, I don't know what muslin was like back there in the early 1800s. It's certainly not like the sort of cheeseclothy sort of muslin that we get these days. Laurie seems to approve of this one. I've got this lovely cotton voile that's left over from a shirt that I made a while back. And as he said that, you know, if you've been a bit extravagant in buying too much or whatever, the leftovers can come in use. Well, today they are. I'm going to hopefully get my chemise out of this metre and a bit of cotton voile. Now, I don't have a pattern for it, but going online, there is a great website, marquise.de. She's a German lady who's put on a lot of vintage stuff. I will link you to it below, but she has given a basic sort of layout for an 18th century chemise. It's really simple. It's just a group of rectangles, triangles for the side gore to give it a bit of spread. It should be really, really easy to put together. She's given suggestions for about the dimensions you should be looking at for it and how to put it together. So if you're in the market for one of these, go to the link below, support her. It's a really great website. So I'm going to basically be following this general design to make my chemise. If I have any leftover fabric, as you might have said, I talked about making a fichu. So what is a fichu? Well, I'm glad you asked. A fichu is kind of a neckerchief that was used to sort of cover that bare skin around a low neckline. You can see an example here from the Manchester Art Gallery, rather beautifully embroidered. Another website that will give you some idea is Tea in a Teacup, and she's got a great page on different sort of fichus and kerchiefs that were put around the neck. So if I have enough of this fabric left over, I might try and make something like that. But if I can't make one, it's probably not the end of the world. So what I think I need to do is find a good place to get my fabric laid out, start to measure up, hope that I've got enough to make this chemise, and that will give me the first layer of my Anne Elliot costume for book week. So let's see how it goes. Hey Laurie.
Well, I figured since this is a school project, let's get to school early and cut it out there. You know the old saying, they say measure twice, cut once. Well, I was definitely doing that as I tried to work out how to lay this out, how long I could make the shift. I figured the fabric being 150 centimetres wide, I could get basically both lengths out of the width of it. So that's what you see me doing there, and then cutting down the side. It means I have a shoulder seam, but that will be all right. Now I have to work out how big to make the neck. It's going to be gathered with a ribbon a little bit, so it needs to be a bit wider and deeper than the finished chemise neckline. But of course, I would rather start having it too small and then just have to keep cutting than cut too much and have a hard time of it. So I was guessing that was about right. So now that I know the length of it, I can work out the length of the gauze for the skirt. As you can see with my trusty school metre ruler, it works really well to cut this sort of thing out. I tried to keep it as much on grain as possible and keeping it at right angles to it. It seems to work okay. And look, if it's a little bit off grain, I don't think it matters so much with one of these chemises. Okay, so we've got the shift, we've got the gauze, now we need the underarm gussets. So these gussets are just squares, about 15 centimetre square. Having done that, now it's working out the sleeves, which means I'm going to need my tape measure to work out, well, how wide it needs to go around my arm, how long I want it. Again, it's up to you a bit with how you do this. So that's my chemise, and that's my leftovers, hopefully enough for a Fichu. And now for the fun, relaxing bit, sewing it. Here I'm doing the shoulder seam, simple back stitch which I'll then fill down. Gotta love some good hand sewing. So unfortunately some of my video footage got corrupted, particularly the bit where I was going to show you how to put it all together, how the gussets work and all of that sort of thing. So I'm going to try and demonstrate that for you on this paper model so you can get an idea of how it all fits together. This is the rest of the shift. We won't worry about that for now, but first things first. I did the shoulder seam of that. Put that aside. Now I am at this sleeve and the underarm gusset. So this is where the shoulder will attach to the shift. That's where the hem will be. First things first, we're going to need to sew one side of the gusset to the underarm like so. At that stage I think I only backstitch it. I don't think I actually finished off the seam yet. What we now need to do is, and I'm going to point with my scissors here, see this? That seam there on the gusset is going to need to match that one there. So you will want to fold your sleeve in half and fold your gusset in half that way. Then you will be able to sew the gusset to the other half of the sleeve like so. And having done that, you can then finish off the rest of the armhole. And that gives then your sleeve some shape with the ability to move a bit more than if it was just a tube here. And you will see what it looked like in my other video. I then wanted to attach this to my actual chemise shift main body, and I did that by starting at the shoulder seam and sewing from the shoulder till the point of the gusset on this side of the body, and then I did the same from the shoulder to the end of the gusset on the other side. So that is then how I sewed the sleeve to my shift. Now, I found this a lot easier doing it by hand. I think machine sewing can get a little fiddly in sewing the gussets in, but by hand it really is quite easy. So this is one where I recommend you do it by hand. So having put the sleeve in, my next step was to take the 2 long triangles for each side gore. I wasn't sure whether I'd be better off sewing the gore together like this first, or as in the picture, sewing it along here and then doing one long seam. I don't know if it would really make a difference which way you do it. I sewed from the bottom to the top of the gore, and then I went from the top all the way down. Having done that, the only thing to worry about is hems and finishing off up there. Would you believe there was a time that I used to hate hand hemming? Now I love it. However, I did realise while I was doing this, I have no bias tape. I'm going to have to make it. So with the scrap, I just folded an edge, cut to give me the bias, and now I'm going to have to rule, well, a lot of pieces because I didn't have any big pieces left. Would it have been easier if I had bought bias tape? Absolutely. Was I buying stuff for this project? No, I was not. So, oh well. More hand sewing to do, piecing together my bias tape. Yay. 20, 40, 60, 80, 1 metre, metre 20, metre 40. Hopefully that'll be enough. We'll see. These we put together like so, and just sewn with a very fine seam along there. That will give me a lot of bias binding. And that's what I got. So here I am sewing that bias binding around the neckline. I think I did enlarge that neckline just a bit from what you saw in the cutting out, so that it would gather up a little bit more when I put the ribbon in. So the last thing I have to do now is thread the ribbon through the neckline, but I looked through my stash to see what ribbon I had. Oh, here's the tray. Better go get that instead. Alright, so back on the train, looking at the ribbons that I actually have in my stash. I like the thickness of this blue one, and I've kind of got blue going on, but I also have this thin off-white one which probably works better. I'm guessing a chemise should probably have white. So for now I'm going to go ahead and use that. Got my safety pin and I'll just thread it through the casing that I made with the bias binding. And then we'll finish it off with a nice bow. That's my chemise finished. Yay! Now, if you remember back, this is the material I had left over. I thought maybe I can make a fichu out of this sort of L-shaped piece of fabric. That is kind of how it could sit. So it should be long enough, and that will sit under at the back, I think, of my dress. So I'm hoping that this might just do without having to get any more fabric, because this is the last of the white voile
that I had. So, you know, if that works, that's great. If not, well, I'll use this voile for something else. But yeah, so I might just do a rolled hem on this. If I want to make it a bit longer or wider, I could even find a pretty lace and just put it round the edge, or even try to do some sort of white work, embroidery, something-y, I don't know. We'll see. Here we have the rolled hem that I'm working on. I'll just take you through how I do it. I don't know if it's the correct way, but it seems to work. So what I do, fold it down probably no more than 5 mils, just once, through the top there. Then I take just 1 or 2 threads from the bottom there, and then angle it through to the top fold. Do it. I don't bother to pull it especially tight just now. I do it again, take a few threads up. Again, don't bother to pull it especially tight. Take a few threads and up. And then when I've done a few, I pull the thread tight so that it rolls over, just like that. And you have a very neat little rolled hem. I do love a lovely neat rolled hem. So still got a little way to go. What I'm curious about is how I'm going to navigate that edge there, or try and treat it as a straight edge like that. I'll work that one out when I get there. Oh, hello. It's another chilly, about 1 degree morning. My fingers are freezing, so I'm not going to be starting any sewing until I'm on the warm train. But I thought while I'm waiting in this lovely sunshine, I might show you where I'm up to. So here's my Fichu collar. I have finished all of the edges with a rolled hem. However, I thought it needed a little bit of dressing up. So I found this lovely cotton lace that I had picked up, I think, from Mood Fabric in one of my early fabric hauls here. This looked lovely and delicate, and I'm really glad I picked this up. I only got, I think, 2 yards, so not even 2 meters, and it's not enough to do all the edges, but I've decided I will do the bottom and the outside edges. And with all of that fiddly sewing done, here's the final result. I love how neat the felled edges are. Did I straighten the hem properly? Possibly not. That's how the Fichu collar will sort of sit into the dress when it's done. I love it. So, is it the most attractive item of clothing? Look, possibly not. Is it important to help make this Regency era dress look correct and sit correctly? Absolutely. So, thank you for joining me for this episode of my Book Week costume. Join me again soon for more Yesterday Today sewing and more Anne Elliot costume. Bye for now.